Hello everyone, this is Cyberyamu. Today I'm going to be talking about schizotypy and its relation with the Enneagram. So I believe that any Enneagram type can have high schizotypy in theory, but there is a basic personality structure to people with high schizotypy that is, they tend to have. And there are some Enneagram types that I really struggle to see fitting into that structure, like Enneagram 8, for example. That doesn't mean that there are no Enneagram 8s with high schizotypy out there. I'm sure there are, but it's just, there are so few of them that it's really hard to definitively say anything on how they would act. Like, I know that I prioritize theory over practice, but even then, with Enneagram 8s, I kind of struggle to make a coherent profile. But I do think there are 4 Enneagram type structures that are very compatible with high schizotypy, and one that I think is probably the most common Enneagram type in people with high schizotypy. And that is type 5, which I'm going to get into now. Now, something that people need to know before watching this video is that I view the Enneagram, I use it less as a personality system and more as a toolbox of understanding different defense mechanisms and personality structures. So, when I say that Enneagram 5 tends towards these schizotypal symptoms, I'm not trying to say that it inherently is, exactly what the Enneagram structure is, or vice versa. I am just saying that there are similarities, and because we have a comprehensive overview of how to grow if you are a 5, then if you have defense mechanisms that mimic a 5's defense mechanisms, even if you aren't a 5, then I think you can definitely benefit from reading up on it. So let's just go straight into it. So, Enneagram 5. I define this personality structure in the most, a very concise way that I would describe it is the earning of security through competent withdrawal. So Enneagram 5s, they feel very overwhelmed by the world. So to protect themselves, they withdraw into their heads and they start intellectualizing the world to help them cope with their sensitivities. So these are stereotypically, the loner people who are really nerdy about subjects, because the way that Enneagram 5s learn to cope with this fear of the world, besides withdrawing, is that when they come out, they want to feel knowledgeable. So, they will learn a lot of things, and they will try to find some sort of expertise that they can use to fit in with the tribe if they have a prominent social instinct. But also it just counts towards survival. So a type 5 could even, be somebody who's really interested in street smarts or survivalism. Really, the possibilities are endless. Anyways, here are the schizotypal symptoms that I think are related to the Enneagram 5 type structure. Rejection of society or convention, idionomia, extreme indifference or openness, attitude of indifference, feelings of extraordinary insight, decentering of selfhood, which is just describing how a person feels separate from the world, sense of loss of freedom, eccentricity, issues with interpersonal intimacy, flat affect, hyperreflectivity, which is just being very introspective, dissociation, social withdrawal, avolition, and sensory hypersensitivity. Which, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but being sensitive to the outside world isn't just an autistic thing, it's also actually a schizotypal thing. The more you know, right? So, type 5 schizotypals often use their unique cognitive style to develop unique intellectual insights in the hope of earning them a place in society, if they care about that. They are very sensitive to the outside world and withdraw into their minds and intellectualize to cope. Type 5 schizotypals often develop interest in things like the occult, conspiracy theories, and spirituality. They tend to be withdrawn, flat, and intellectually unique.
Type 5 schizotypals are typically lower in ideas of reference and social anxiety. As schizotypals, they are uniquely intellectual. However, they are especially vulnerable to complex delusions, flat affect, and dissociation. An example that I would give of a type 5 schizotypal is Max Cohen from the movie Pi. He becomes obsessed with patterns and trying to figure out basically the equation of everything, and he descends into psychosis because of it, which I think is a pretty fitting narrative theme for a type 5 schizotypal.
1245. Restate my assumptions. 1. Mathematics is the language of nature. 2. Everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. 3. If you graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge. Therefore, there are patterns everywhere in nature.
The second type of schizotypal that I will cover resembles the Enneagram 6, and the Enneagram 6 I would concisely define as adjustment for security through reactive compliance. That is the primary defense mechanism of the type 6. Some schizotypal symptoms that I would associate with Enneagram 6 are antagonomia, which just means, if society tells me to do something, I'll do the opposite. This obviously would be in the nature of a counterphobic 6, if that means anything to you. If it doesn't really matter. I can't really see a schizotypal 6 being phobic anyways. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of them are counterphobic. There's idionomia, pervasive disbelief, adherence to abstract rules, sense of loss of freedom, ideas of reference, which in the Enneagram 6 we would typically call that projection, social anxiety, paranoid ideation, ambivalence, which doesn't mean that they have no opinions, it just means that they have many conflicting opinions on the same topic, and double bookkeeping, which describes a person's ability to juggle the laws of reality with the laws of their internal world and understanding. Type 6 schizotypals feel that they cannot trust themselves nor the world around them. They can feel trapped between not trusting themselves due to the cognitive distortions they experience and struggling to trust the world instead due to paranoid ideation. They often project their own thoughts and feelings onto the world, experiencing ideas of reference, believing unrelated things to somehow be related to them. In the absence of trust in themselves and the world, many type 6 schizotypals place their trust in abstract theories and rules. They often have interest in conspiracy theories. They tend to be suspicious, anxious, intellectual, and reactive. Type 6 schizotypals are typically lower in social withdrawal, flat affect, dissociation, and indifference. As schizotypals, they are uniquely active and socially oriented. However, they are especially vulnerable to paranoia, anxiety, and ambivalence. So an example of a type 6 schizotypal that I would give is Sato Tatsuhiro from Welcome to the NHK. He doesn't remain strongly schizotypal throughout the whole anime or manga, but the first episode, for example, in the anime, I actually thought that he was schizophrenic. Turns out it was just because he was doing drugs, but he was in psychosis. And the first episode shows him becoming extremely paranoid about others' judgment, the world around him, beginning to believe that a television broadcast is trying to turn Japanese men into hikikomoris through anime. Yeah, lots of stuff like that. So I think he would be a pretty good example of an Enneagram 6 schizotypal.
It's a conspiracy. That's what it is. A conspiracy! Nihon.
Hikikomori.
Yokai. I'm being targeted by an evil underground organization. Those NHK bastards set me up! It's a conspiracy! Hey, wait!
Even though I don't know if he's actually Enneagram 6, like I said, I'm just using this to describe different personality structures.
Next, we have the Enneagram 9 schizotypals. I would summarize Enneagram 9's defense mechanism as adjustment for autonomy through positive withdrawal. I just realized I didn't really describe the Enneagram 6 earlier, but I feel like since this isn't an Enneagram video per se, as much as it is a schizotypal video, I think it's okay if I leave these open-ended, especially since I list some of the symptoms that are common in these types with their schizotypal. I think that gives a pretty decent, a pretty decent picture of what the actual type is like. But if you're interested in it, then, there's plenty of resources on the Enneagram online. I don't have anything new to contribute right now. Anyways, the common schizotypal symptoms in type 9 schizotypals is an attitude of indifference,
flat affect, meaning, trouble showing emotion or feeling it, dissociation, social withdrawal, and avolition. So type 9 schizotypal symptoms usually lean negative. They often struggle with motivation and can suffer from indifference. This indifference can be intellectual. So when type 9s experience distressing thoughts, such as paranoia, they often repress them. They often redirect their symptoms into more comforting areas, such as New Age spirituality and mysticism. Type 9 schizotypals often feel conflicted between distrusting others, yet longing for acceptance in the tribe. They tend to be laid back, withdrawn, and mystical. So I feel like if you are a type 9, then your schizotypy is much more likely to fit into the stereotype of, like the New Age guru who's really into crystals and meditation. And, some people argue that that's not real schizotypy, whatever that's supposed to mean. But I don't think that schizotypy necessarily has to present in the stereotypical, Enneagram 5 or Enneagram 6 kind of way, right? So these are all archetypes that we have of schizotypals in our heads, whether we know it or not. The Enneagram 5 schizotypal, we all know the idea of that mad scientist or genius who, likes to really learn things and is very knowledgeable, but it tends to be very obscure and niche and morbid topics, and also their thought processes are a little bit kooky. There's the Enneagram 6. We all know about the stereotype of the paranoid schizophrenic, the government is after me kind of thing. But the Enneagram 9 encompasses the New Age guru, just buy some crystals and balance your chakras, man, kind of people. And obviously that's not the only way that they can present, but that's just the archetype that we have in our heads. So an example, I got ahead of myself. Type 9 schizotypals are typically lower in paranoid ideation, hyperreflectivity, social withdrawal, and eccentricity. As schizotypals, they are uniquely palatable and easygoing. However, they are especially vulnerable to avolition and dissociation. So an example I would give of this sort of schizotypal would be Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter, where she is odd. She does believe in things that nobody else does, and she does dress strangely, but she has a very calm and gentle presence to her, and she's more socially skilled than most schizotypals. So lastly, we have the Enneagram 4 type schizotypal, and the Enneagram 4 I would summarize as the transformation of self-worth through reactive withdrawal. So the schizotypal symptoms that are common in Enneagram 4 schizotypals are antagonomia, which, like I said, anything society tells me to do or something tells me to do, I will do the opposite, rebellion. Idionomia, I've been avoiding explaining this whole video because I don't know what the fuck it means. I knew what it meant when I wrote it down. I don't anymore, I forgot. I'll try to define it at the end of the video, but I'll probably forget to, so oopsies. Anyway, feelings of specialness, feelings of centrality, ideas of reference, eccentricity, hyperreflectivity, and social withdrawal. So, type 4 schizotypals often incorporate their schizotypal symptoms into their identity. They have a love-hate relationship with it, appreciating the fact that it makes them unique in thought and presentation, but also having deep-rooted feelings of inferiority and envy of other people for being normal. They tend to be eccentric, introspective, rebellious, and withdrawn. Type 4 schizotypals are typically lower in flat affect, social withdrawal, dissociation, and indifference. As schizotypals, they are uniquely emotional, expressive, and accepting, or even proud of their eccentricity. However, they are especially vulnerable to ideas of reference, feelings of specialness, and hyperreflectivity. So an example I would give of a type 4 type schizotypal would be Rika Takanashi from Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions. She is a LARPer, so, she goes about her day in a magical girl costume and talks about how she's fighting an evil organization. Here with Rika, we can see that she's not overtly ashamed of her schizotypal symptoms. In fact, she wears them like a badge. She wants to be herself, she wants to be authentic, but, she also struggles with it because she not tries per se, but she expresses her individuality so much that it isolates her, and that hurts her in the end.
It's her! The girl from last night! It opened!
So that's Rika. So if I had to summarize the schizotypals of all these types, I would say that for the Enneagram 5, their main trait is odd cognition. For the Enneagram 6, it's paranoia. For the Enneagram 9, it's avolition. And for the Enneagram 4, it's eccentricity. So what can we do with this knowledge? Well, I just listed the core traits associated with each of these types. So let's say that you're struggling because you're very eccentric and that leaves you with some problems. Well, get into the Enneagram. I'm serious. Read about the Enneagram 5. You don't have to identify as an Enneagram 5. You don't have to look for your type. You know, I feel the Enneagram community is really underwhelming because they have no imagination. That's the truth. They use the Enneagram solely as a personality system 99% of the time. I say use it as an understanding of how different coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms interact with each other. So if you are struggling with your, I actually said that odd cognition is for Enneagram 5, eccentricity is for Enneagram 4, my bad. But let's say that you are struggling with odd cognition, which is in the realm of the type 5 schizotypal. Read about how type 5s need to develop themselves. You know, because in theory, an Enneagram 5's growth line is to Enneagram 8. And so you can see, you know, to overcome this, you need to become more, to connect with your body more, to start acting more, become more assertive, and so forth. So I think that is a pretty helpful system.
Okay guys, I gotta run because I exposed the Enneagram community and the schizotypal community at once. They're tracking my location at the moment, so I think I'm just gonna go to Alaska for a few days. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Cyberium out.